We have 2 participants, attendees so far. Please, as you come in, I welcome you. How's your day going? Please let us know in the chat where you're coming from and what you're looking forward to in this session. Welcome to this year's Academy. I'll do the introduction in a few minutes, just to allow a few more people to come in a minute, then we'll start the session. So everyone is welcome. How's everyone doing? Please let us know in the chat where you're joining us from, what graduate scholar from which country, and what you're looking forward to for this session. Just to introduce myself before I do a full introduction of the presenter, my name is Phoebe Msonda, and I am WMI graduate scholar, but also WMI regional coordinator for Central and Southern Africa. And I'm based in Lusaka, Zambia. I'll be your moderator for this session. My role is to support the presenter, but also to ensure that I get all the answers from all the questions from attendees, and that the presenter gets all the questions and answers them adequately. So feel free to ask questions. I will also talk about how the session will be. So just the structure of the session and what is expected of all of us. We have 12 attendees, so I'll do the introduction of the presenter, and then we can get started, and everyone else will join us since we are 3 minutes into the session. Give me a minute to introduce. Okay, just pulling up the bio for the presenter. So again, I'd like to welcome you to WMI's Online Academy for 2022, which will take place. It started on the 8th. Sorry, it started on the 6th. That's on Tuesday, and it will go on until October 28th. And then there are 2 tracks. That is the business track, business development track, and the CBO and NGO track. So for today, if you're here, I'm assuming you are in the right place in the CBO and NGO track. And today we're learning about conducting a needs assessment. So where to start? So the WMI Academy, I know most of us, it might be new to us. We are new participants or attendees. So the WMI Academy is an exciting opportunity for recent graduates. So it's only for graduate scholars to participate in an intensive professional development program. So this is one of the professional development program WMI conducts every year. Invited participants can choose between learning skills essential to develop in business, like I mentioned, either you're in the business track or in the CBO NGO plan track. Guest speakers from universities, like our presenter today, coming from a university and from an industry where they are expert in, will be presenting key concepts and the how-to skills needed during weekly 1-hour live webinars. So this is 1 hour expected to start at the top of the hour. The presenter should go through the presentation in 45 minutes, and then the 15 minutes after that is reserved for questions. I want to now introduce the presenter today. Today, our presenter's name is Mr. Albanous Gitiru, sorry for that. He's permitted me to call him Alba today. He has an MA, that is Masters of Arts in Monitoring and Evaluation of Development Programs from the University of Nairobi, a master's degree in Health, Promotion and International Development from the University College of London, and a degree in Sociology and Psychology from the University of Nairobi, a diploma in Youth Development Work from Dar es Salaam University. So he's very well able in this department. Apart from that, in the industry, he's worked in the development as a practitioner with over 15 years worth of experience in management and implementation of development programs in education, health, youth empowerment, community media, economic empowerment and gender programming. Currently, he's the programs director at America Share, and the executive director for the Center for Empowerment and Integrated Development. He has managed high-level donor-funded projects with international NGOs, including Comic Relief, USAID, UK Aid, and Ford Foundation, among others. So this is just to say that he is an expert in this field, and that he is very qualified to take us through what we're learning today. Apart from that, he's also a community organizer and advocate on various social justice issues. He's also a pioneer member of Slums Information Development and Resources Centers, having steered the organization from its inception to gain international accolades and win international awards. So this is the person who knows what he's talking about, and I hope that we will be present enough to let him teach us. So over to you, Alba, and welcome for everyone else who came after I did the official welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phoebe, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here for this academy this year, and I'm hoping that through our presentation today, you're going to learn and gain some confidence in starting something for the sake of your community and also in terms of your professional growth. I wouldn't want to take so much of the time in the introductory bit, but the brief that I have is just to share with you on the needs assessment and the needs assessment process, and how this process is going to help you in starting your own initiatives. So we can go ahead to our presentation, starting with our slides. So by the end of my presentation, this is what I expect. The next slide, please. So by the end of this session, I'm hoping that you'll get a better understanding of the definition of needs assessment and the importance of needs assessment in organizations. I would also wish to ensure that you have a grasp of the needs assessment tools and techniques, and how these tools and techniques are used across programs. At the same time, you'll appreciate the importance of needs assessment in organization growth and development. Lastly, you'll be able to apply the knowledge in developing a project that would address community needs in your community of interest. Next slide. So if we are talking about needs assessment, I will need to understand a bit of background and where and why do organizations exist. Organizations exist to address social problems and make life more bearable to communities. We have a range of problems that exist within community, but we can categorize them in different categories. Probably we'll have social problems, economic problems, environmental problems, you name them. And the organization now needs to identify their purpose. In organization development, the purpose of the organization forms part of the mission statement. And when you're trying to address a social need or addressing a social problem, that social problem is where your organization mission statement emanates from. We need to be more effective. Then we will need to identify a niche. We will need to identify how do we get the desired outcome. We can't solve everything. So what is it that you're special in, that you feel you have the strength in? Then that is the niche. That is what you would feel like your contribution will have a greater impact to the community within that scope or within that area. For you to be able to identify your niche, then you would need to go through a process. This is the process that we call the needs assessment. every time I get a chance to talk to young practitioners, I keep saying that organizations should be driven by the community need so that the community that you're serving can have a sense of ownership of the organization, and will make it so much easier in implementation and getting the impact of your programming. So needs assessment can be conducted for newly forming organizations when you want to identify your area, specific area of operation. It can also be done to existing organizations that are already running programs, but they would want to improve on a situation. They would want probably to expand their programs. They would want to assess gaps in their programs in terms of enhancing, scaling up, and such kind of thing. In a nutshell, what we are saying is that the needs assessment is an activity that gauges gaps and insufficiencies. What are these gaps? How do we identify these gaps? Now, that is the process of needs assessment. Now, with that background, I think we can now get to understand the definitions. There is a definition that says needs assessment is a process for determining the organization's and community's needs. That how will you be certain that this is what the organization needs, this is what the community needs? If you're coming in as practitioners, you will have to be sure of that need so that you can be able to either start an organization or establish or initiate an initiative. The needs assessment is the what the organization needs. And this what precedes the gap analysis, which is the how part. How to close the gap between where the organization currently is and where you would want the organization to be. So therefore, the process estimates deficiencies. It really attempts to estimate deficiencies, that this is where we are at, this is where we would wish to get to. There is a gap somewhere. There is a vacuum. There is a space that would need to fill. So just like in the previous slide, the assessment is an activity that gauges gaps and also ensures that insufficiencies are also identified. To the next slide. Let's get to a bit more scientific definition. Alison Rosset defines needs assessment as a systematic study of a problem or an innovation. It is a systematic study because it uses scientific processes and they are well defined. So a systematic study of the problem or innovation by first incorporating data and opinions from various sources in order to make effective decisions or recommendations about what should happen next. So as much as we would want to give a direction on what is to happen next, this direction should be informed, and should be informed by facts and also by data. The second definition says that the needs assessment is a systematic set of procedures that are used to determine needs, examine the nature and causes, and set priorities for future action. The third definition, the process of identifying and determining how to bridge the gap between an organization's current state and the organization's desired state. So in all these three definitions, there is something that is cutting across, that there is a current state, there is a desired state. Between these two states, there is a space or there is a gap. This gap, for us to be effective, we need to assess what is exactly this gap, and then we can now make informed decision on what direction we would wish to take. Let's move to the next slide. For those that are conversant with project management, this illustration just shows how the process of needs assessment can be conducted. This is a replacement of the project identification cycle. And from the illustration, you can see that we have our first step where you need to gather evidence. Any intervention that is not based on evidence, that is like biblically building your building on quicksand. You need to get a good foundation for your building to be steady. The good foundation in all development related projects is evidence. And evidence, data, those are two things that we really cannot stay away from if we would want to have successful organization or successful projects. So first you have to gather the evidence. Then the second stage is to analyze this evidence, use different analytical tools. And the third is, after you've gathered the evidence, you have analyzed, then you need to narrow down and say, what are the contributing factors for this problem, for this situation? So you do a brainstorming, come out with what the contributing factors would be. Then fourth, you need to get to the root cause. These are the contributing factors, but the main factor that is the root cause is this one. Now, you will have identified where you need to start, the epicenter of your project. And 5 is determine the next stage for improvement. The next stage for improvement is like the implementation plan. It's a very small illustration, but really this speaks a lot in the development world. I would want to just run you through these 5 steps, but with a program in mind. So this is the process. Conduct needs assessment and gauge the extent and severity of the problem. Then from there, once you have the magnitude of the problem, identify the best intervention that is suited to give you the best impact. After that, you'll have to evaluate the efforts to inform whether the intervention is making a difference, the monitoring and evaluation component of project management. Then after some times, then there is a need of the population to be assessed again to determine the impact. When you look at the last 2 points, these 2 points show the difference between monitoring and evaluation. That we try to get the outputs of a project, the quick gains after implementation of a project, that is inform whether the intervention is making a difference. But then later, probably after you're done with the project implementation, after some time, you will go back to the population of interest and measure again, are there any permanent, more changes that are more grounded? And these ones, we call them now the outcomes. So the output and the outcomes. But the outcomes, we can easily get the outcomes and the impacts after the project has been implemented. The next slide, please. So having understood what the needs assessment is and how this needs assessment is conducted within a program or project framework, would need to also now move to the other part of why would we do the needs assessment? Why is needs assessment important in organizations? You can see my first bullet, very critical in decision making. Decisions within the program management facets have to be informed decisions. So for you to be able to make the right decisions, you will need to have evidence or data that is accompanying your decision-making activity or process. So needs assessment gives you that critical aspect and the power to make the right decisions. The second bullet is about justification for decisions. Sometimes we make certain decisions within our organizations, but for us to find a justification for the decisions we make, then this needs to be backed up by credible data. Where do you get this credible data? You will only get it when you have conducted a good needs assessment process. The third bit is scalability of programs. There are times we'll do implement programs, but at a very small level. We call them pilot programs. So after you have implemented the pilot program, you look at evaluation and monitoring of the entire program with a view that you can make it bigger. So the making the program bigger, expanding it, that is what we say, bringing it to scale. So the needs assessment outcome is the one that will inform you in how to upscale the program that you wish to expand on. There are other times we do programs in different parts. They come out successful and would want to, again, repeat that implementation in another different context or in another different locality. We call that replicability. How is the program replicable in another setting? So for you to be able also to know this, the needs assessment is very crucial. You do your program, finish the implementation, assess it all through, and then you can be able to use the knowledge from the implementation of the first program and help you in ensuring that the replicability part is the implementation in the different context is seamless. The last but not least is interdisciplinary solution to complex problems. There are times you have problems that cut across different disciplines. And for you to be able to understand complex problems, then you will need to break them down. The process of breaking them down to phenomena that is understandable, that is the work that we leave to the needs assessment experts. Next slide. Then why within the organization would we want to do needs assessment? Within the organization, the needs assessment can be undertaken for various purposes. We've seen that for you to understand and request for resources to do good resource mobilization, then you will need to have a better understanding of your organization, where it is going. Then you can say, for us to get to this part, we will need this kind of resources. Now, that assessment of that gap and how to cover that gap, then that's the needs assessment bit. Where else do we need it? We need it in program expansion. I explained that earlier. We need it in monitoring and evaluation, very, very crucial for understanding the successes of our projects. We need it for planning. When you're creating a roadmap on where you're going, and you'd want to get markers on that road so that you see that you're heading the right direction. These markers in project management, we call them milestones. So as you go implementing the milestones, you're reaching towards your goal. That whole process, that whole roadmap, for you to chart it out, it's a whole planning process where the needs assessment bit is required. Again, for program improvement and also community participation and involvement. There is something we call a participatory rural appraisal process that you can be able to involve your beneficiaries in developing projects together. You assess what they need, you assess what the solutions they put forward, and how best we can go implementing those solutions to get to the end goal that the project would wish to arrive at. So what we have bulleted is the same as what we have in these small circles. But one thing I would want to point out to you is that you can see that the circles overlap. That when you look at identifying resources to address needs and then determining the program needs, there is an overlap that they don't stand alone in silos, but all these 6 processes that are helped and enhanced by the needs assessment process, these 6 activities interrelate and overlap in different ways. So program evaluation, funding, program priorities, program needs, developing a strategic plan for the organization, and understanding resources and how to address the needs. All that are intertwined, and we are able to get a command of all this by understanding and having a very nice needs assessment process. The next slide. Yeah, now this is where I want us to work a bit. I want us to jog our minds a bit on how to conduct a basic needs assessment. We've gone through the project identification cycle. We've gone through the arrows on how we conduct our needs assessment. And we want now to understand better how this process, we can go about it. So as we said, different terminologies for different steps, but all the same, once you understand the context, then it becomes far much easier for you. The first part, we are talking about the situation analysis. I would want to bring your attention to the illustration or the drawing that, that we have on one side and the bulleting on the other side, because as you can see, the drawing has 5 boxes, and the bullet also has 5 bullets on numbers. Now, this is done intentionally so that we can find the correlation between the boxes and the bullets. So when I talk of step 1 being situation analysis, this is my own creation, but I would love that even you can be able to do the same as you start to set out your own mini projects. So situation analysis, for me, I wanted to look at this situation that is very common and rampant globally, and more so in Africa, that HIV infection rate is high amongst the young people. The most at risk is 13 to 24 years. And within this, we can see that there is early sexual debut. We can see that HIV infection, there is HIV infection during infancy, because children are born from HIV parents. Then again, still within this community, I would say so, there is unprotected sex. But one thing that really surprises me is that there is a great fear of pregnancy that supersedes the fear of contracting HIV. So this is the situation that we are in. We've done our situation analysis using different methods that we'll learn later. Then we ask ourselves, let's move to the next step. Our next step is the gap analysis. For you to be able to know the gap, then you will need to know the desired outcome. Where would you wish to go? This is, number 1 is where we are. High infection rate, high, very low sexual debut. Actually, if I share from the Kenyan perspective, sexual debut amongst boys is 10 years and 9 years amongst girls. So that's where they start experiencing sex at that age for the first time. The infection rate during infancy, we are talking about 0 infection rate, maternal infection rate. But again, that is not where we are at. When we look at unprotected sex, so many young people would have sex without a condom. There is fear of pregnancy. People will go for pregnancy suppression pills after sex, yet they do not go to check on their HIV status. So that is the situation. Now, where do we want to get to? For this project that we are putting, this mock project, we would want 90% of the population that we are serving to know their HIV status. We would want 90% of those that have been clinically diagnosed to be put on medication. So we have the 90-90 rule. Now, with this 90-90 goal, and my population is young people, both genders, 13 to 24 years. So there exists. This is the situation beginning. This is what I would wish to get to. Now, how do I get into this 90-90 goal? Then we go to the third part, which is the options analysis. What options do I have, or what interventions do I have that will help me move from where I am to where I would wish to go to? And for my options for this mock project, I'm looking at continuous, consistent, and directed communication strategies. Also, having HIV testing and screening in schools, because these are the school-going age. Sex education curriculum being implemented in schools, and having schools HIV clubs and HIV ambassadors. So those are the options that I feel can help me in meeting the goal that I had set out. Then after we have the options, what is the implementation plan? How are we going to implement these options? So you look against bullet number 4, then we say we can implement this by designing and developing programs after needs assessment. And these programs are, for example, having school clubs, having informational gaming applications, getting teacher empowerment programs so that teachers can be able to empower their students, and also getting guidance and counseling support within the school environment. So that is just an example of some of the things. I think I did not address them exclusively, but it's just a matter of giving us direction on how we can go about when we try and design our own programs, our own projects, or start our own organizations. And after we are done this, that is the implementation. We know this is what we would want to do. Then we can be able to do our work plans. We can be able to do our Gantt charts, and we go straight on and do the implementation. After implementation, you should always have an elaborate monitoring and evaluation plan. Then you can now be able to say, did my interventions make any sense? And did I ever get to reach to the goal that I had set out in the gaps analysis? I think that jogs your mind, gives you an idea that we do not need to discuss needs assessment from utopia. We are just doing it theoretically because we are academicians and all that. You also need now to make the practicality bit of it. How practical is it? And can this be something that is realistic and can be attainable? So this slide was just to give you an idea of how you can go about it. And using the same, then you can be able to look at what are the needs in your community, do your situation analysis, find your gaps where you'd want to get yourself into, find your options analysis, and voila, you will have done your needs assessment. To the next slide. So after you've done your needs assessment, there are 3 key components that are crucial for us to understand. Now, the first component in needs assessment is the initiation. The initiation starts out by identifying what are the frame factors, otherwise known as the limiting factors for the needs assessment. That is the scope you can't do everything. You also need to restrict yourself to scope and for you to be more effective. Then once you understand what your scope is, understand the organization that you're analyzing, and also understand the stakeholders that you'll be doing this needs assessment with. That is the initiation component. Then the most important component now, which is like, to me, I keep saying this is the meat to the bones, is the data collection and analysis. Now, during this stage, you can either perform the PEST analysis, checking on the political, economic, social, technological factors. You can also do a SWOT analysis, understanding the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within your organization. Collect data. For you to collect this data, do this PEST, do this SWOT. You can do that through various methods. You can do interviews, you can do observations, surveys, reviewing existing documents. Diverse methods should be used to ensure that we have triangulation, that we can be able to reveal, are there trends that are painting a more accurate picture of what is going on. Then the final product is including now the summary of your findings. What is the migration strategy? Which are the driving forces that we need to strengthen, and which are the restraining forces that we need to limit? And then finally, you do your report and give your recommendations. So based on that, then you can be able to look at your recommendation. Am I starting an organization? Am I starting a project? Am I increasing another program or project within the organization? So all that will come at the recommendation stage. Next slide. So these are the tools and techniques that we use when we do needs assessment. So first, we gather information by doing document review. This is more like desk research. What is out there in the books, in previously done research? You can be able to get your concepts. You can develop your conceptual framework from reviewing the documents. One of the things that I really try to advocate and push out for is that whatever you do not reinvent the wheel. You're not the only person in the globe, in the world. Try and see what others have done so that you can be able to build on what others have done. Then that makes desk research or document review very crucial as a technique in needs assessment. The other bit is having guided expert reviews. So if you're doing your needs assessment around the area of health and HIV, it doesn't harm to get an expert, interview the expert, understand what are the trending contemporary issues, and also be able now to pick the mind of the experts to inform the kind of direction that you would want to take. Apart from the experts, we also have our own beneficiaries or the community that we serve. And we can be able also to collect information and data from this group by having focused group discussions. These are discussions for a certain number of people, and doing it in an open but focused way, that there is commonality between these groups. That's why it's called a focus group discussion. So most of the time it's between 10 to 15 people who share something in common that you are able to bring them through that common goal and discuss what is the way forward, or tap into their mind on what their thoughts are around a certain area. Might it be health? Might it be education? Might it be enterprise development? So you will be able to know how well, what is the need, what is the proposed solutions, how do they wish to get themselves into that solution. Other bit is by conducting interviews and surveys, more so for a larger population, that you can be able to collect data across a larger population and get varied views on different areas. When I talk about these tools and techniques, most of the time I like bringing my experience on community-owned projects, that sometimes as initiators of CBOs, as initiators of NGOs, would want to sit down, think on behalf of the community, and develop programs or projects for them. In the long run, you might end up doing a very nice project design. You've gotten funding, but when it comes to implementation, you are not seeing any person interested because you did not involve them. So very important when you're initiating projects, when you're starting organizations, let the community where you'll be doing this be involved in drawing the roadmap on how this organization is gonna go. Let's go to the next slide. We get a bit now into understanding these techniques and methods. The guided expert interviews, as I said, the purpose is to gain informed perspective from valued experts, and it has its advantages, it has its disadvantages, so it's up to you to see what method, what technique would work well for the kind of intervention you're getting yourself into. One of the advantages is that it allows a fresh set of eyes, new ideas and new insights that you're getting from the experts. It also brings credibility to the process, that this is a person who has been in this field for a long time, and the kind of perspective that he's giving you is credible perspective. And it also allows for benchmarking against other similar systems, and can be done remotely. Hence, you can save time and resources. You can do it a discussion over Zoom. You can also be able to do it over phone call and such kind of thing. The disadvantage bit is that there is a challenge in criteria for the choice of the expert. How do you choose who is you get the views from? And also from the expert perspective, there is subjectivity, as prior experience affects the outcome of the process. So this person might not look at this freshly, like what we say, from the fresh eyes, but would want to share previous experiences. Then you might be ending up reinventing the wheel, or thinking along the same thought lines as the expert. So you have to be very careful when you're involving the expert, that at the same time you still maintain objectivity. Sometimes it can be expensive. Experts are also expensive, finding their time. How do you compensate for their time? And which expert would you wish to have? So again, those are the disadvantages, but in all the techniques, in all the tools, you just need to weigh the advantages and disadvantages and know which one you would want to use most in your needs assessment. Next slide. The focus group discussion, as I said, is collecting information from a small group that is around 5 to 12 people in a structured format. So the facilitator presents the participants with the questions designed to yield insights into the results, the current and the desired results that you'd wish. Again, the advantages that many people involved at the same time. Then they build on each other's comments and reactions. So it's more like a brainstorming. We are building on an idea. It's a seed. It grows into something bigger, and everyone is bringing in their perspective. And it also helps people to come into consensus, especially when you have so many ideas mooted, then you need to prioritize. So the prioritization part really comes out nice when you're doing a focused group discussion. Next. So the other bit is the interviews. The purpose of conducting interviews is to collect information from a single person through a format. Interviews can come in different formats. Mainly we have three. We have the structured interviews, we have the semi-structured interviews, and then we have the unstructured interviews. The structured interviews the questions are predetermined in both topic and order. You have to follow that, both the topic and the order. But when you come to the semi-structured interview, a few questions are predetermined, but other questions are not planned. So the difference again between semi-structured and unstructured is that in the unstructured interview, none of the questions is predetermined. So you just sit and have like a casual talk, but it seems fits or intertwines well with the topic or the area that you would want to gather more information around. The advantages of interviews that people may offer information that they wouldn't in a group. Sometimes you'll get people who are a bit shy. They cannot really participate in a group setup. But if you do interviews, then they'll be able to give you feedback and information. Then the interviewer can also be able to observe nonverbal behavior and also allow someone to get follow-through questions as you're interacting in person with the person you're interviewing. Next. So as I said, we do this and we analyze organizations doing a SWOT analysis. I wouldn't wish to take so much time here because I understand that you will get a whole session around SWOT analysis. But the gist of it is that it attempts to identify the strengths, the weaknesses. These S and W are what are internally within the company. And then the other external factors, the two external factors are what we call now the opportunities that you need to latch into and the threats that you need to avoid. So it's more of assessing internal factors, both positive and negative, that affect the company, and external factors, both positive and negative, that the company should be aware of. So that's why it's called a SWOT analysis. Let's go to the next one. I talked about the pest analysis. This is a bit broader because it studies external factors, but now brings political, economic, technological, and social factors that influence an organization. Then it can be used in different scenarios and can guide people and professionals, especially the senior managers in strategic decision making. It's more of a strategic planning tool that will help in understanding, giving you a 360 understanding of where, within which factors is your organization operating, so that as you set out your goals, your strategic goals for the 2, 3, or 5 years strategy, then you're setting those goals cognizant of the other factors that will be interacting, or the organization will be interacting with for that period of time. That's why it's called the pest analysis. Finally, this is the path that we are taking. This is the projected direction. That one, we are either starting our own initiative, that is CBOs or businesses. We are either improving existing programs and projects. We are either trying to attract more funding and finding more resources for the organization. And in all this, whatever that we do, we must always do it right. And how do we do it right? We do it right by embracing needs assessment, because needs assessment is the solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alba, for that very informative session. I hope we've all found it very informative. Now we are going to go into question and answers. So we have 10 minutes for that. I have some in the Q&A section. And then if you want to ask live as well, please raise your hand and I'll give you that option. So there is a question from Charles. Okay, there's a comment first. If I got it well, needs assessment can be performed for an existing organization. If so, what's the difference between needs assessment and monitoring and evaluation in that context? He has two questions. Maybe I can ask both. I can read out both, then you can answer. The second one is, while conducting needs assessment, how the target of 90 out of 90 is said to be under gap analysis. I guess it's how is the target of 90 out of 90 said to be under gap analysis. I thought gap analysis would be to look at those interventions lacking in the system. So he needs clarification.
Thank you so much, Charles. As I said, needs assessment can be conducted in different ways. And the different ways is that you can have an existing organization, and this organization wants either to expand, wants to understand its programs. Then when they conduct that needs assessment, there is not so much of a difference between that and monitoring and evaluation, but it helps, the outcome of it helps the organization in either upscaling, either expanding their programs. The second bit is when you're doing what we call community entry strategies, or you're starting a new project. When you're starting a new project, then you will also conduct needs assessment within the project area so that you can be able to understand what are the rigors of this project, what are the current situation around that area, and what is the projected or desired outcome. Now, this ties up to your second question, where you're asking how 90/90 is gap analysis, and you're thinking that the gap analysis is to check on existing interventions. We will not be doing like a program audit for other projects that are ongoing, but we will be looking from a global perspective. Where is the outcome? So this is the desired. My desire is 90/90, but this is where I am at. Now, once you know these two places, then you'll realize that there is a gap. The most important thing is identify now, this is the gap. Now you can now delve deeper and say, from this gap, this is what I would wish to address. Now, what do you want to address? Would you want to address HIV screening and testing? Then you can be able now to get deeper into it. If you want to address information gaps, then you will also be able to delve deeper in it. The most important thing when we say identification of the gap is to ensure that this is where we are at, this is the desired situation. Sometimes when you're trying to set up your goal and you look at the current situation, there is not so much of variance. Then if I am a donor, I will be a bit hesitant in giving you funds because I am not seeing value for the money that I will be injecting into your project.
Okay. Thank you so much, Abba. And then the next question is from Johnson. It says, I understand that needs assessment is usually a critical step in initiating a specific or targeted project. Does the formula outlined exactly apply to establishing a CBO NGO itself, who itself implements the project? I'm trying to understand that. I hope you understand the question.
Now, we need to have distinguish between the NGO and the CBO. And when you look at the CBO, is more of a community-based organization. The scope of the CBO is a bit restricted. Most of the CBOs, you'll see them addressing just a certain phase or a certain aspect of a need. Now, if you're initiating your CBO, then the needs assessment becomes crucial because you will need to do something we call community needs assessment. You'd need to sit with your community that you'd want to serve, understand what the needs of this community are. And once you've known what the needs of the community are, that is what will give you your mandate. And if you can remember my first slide, I said, now that mandate will be part of the mission statement for your CBO. So you'll be starting a CBO, a grounded CBO, because it will be addressing a felt need in your community.
Thank you. The next one is from Jesh Kuku, I think that's Joyce. In the process slide, at what point do you evaluate the needs assessment? Is it before, during, or after project implementation?
Now, the needs assessment in itself is a process. And as you are doing that, look at the slide that I shared on the components. And we said there is the initiation, then there is the data collection, and then there is the final production. So once you're done with your final production, you will give your recommendations. Those recommendations are the ones that will help the next step. Once you've implemented that step, needs assessment does not end. It is implemented in a continuum. Once you're done with that, then after implementation, you will still do another assessment. And that is where Charles was saying, is there a difference between needs assessment and monitoring and evaluation? It's still the same, but one is done purely on the project and project outcomes, but this other one is more broader because it addresses the project, but at the same time also the organization itself.
Okay, thank you for that. Mayom Marek says, pest analysis, PEST. Sometime I do not like the pestle analysis, which adds two words, environmental and legal. So it was a comment. From Jan, is it possible for SWOT and pest analytics to be used in the same project? How will you differentiate political and social factors of pest analysis from the external factors identified in SWOT analysis?
Thank you. I would really not wish to get into the SWOT analysis because you will get a whole session around it. But in all this analysis, it's upon the organization to know which one they would wish to use. So you can use SWOT, you can use PEST, you can use PESTEL. There are quite a number, but it is dependent on what would you want to arrive at in the long run. If you're looking at organizational strengthening, then we will really be restricted to a SWOT analysis because we would want to check internally and externally opportunities, threats, strengths, and weaknesses for the organization. But if we would want to see the organization within a bigger picture, then we will be able now to do either the PEST or the PESTEL as we look at various factors. Organizations do not exist in isolation. So you will do SWOT for the organization itself, but if you want to see where your organization positions with regard to the other factors, then you will do PEST. But they cannot be done concurrently. They will be done according to the need that you would want to address within the organization.
Okay, thank you. So the last two questions. I am sure data analysis is done after data collection. One method of collecting data is by asking questions in interviews. So you said there are three types of questions: structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. Can all the data analysis tools be applied to all these types of questions that we have, or are there specific data analysis tools for specific questions? That's from Akim Longwe. The second question is from Abdul Karim Kone. I want the presenter to narrow down on the SWOT and PEST analysis for better understanding, please. I think you just explained. Okay. I don't know if there's anything more.
Yes. That's fine. I think the second last question that you asked, Phoebe. Let me just
Should I read it again?
No, it's fine.
Right.
Data analysis, whether it is done after data collection. Again, we cannot, the techniques and the tools that we have outlined, it does not mean that you can use or you will be forced to use all of them. What you use is according to the end goal. What do you want to get at the end of your engagement? So there are times you'd want to measure, you'd want to assess behavioral knowledge gaps and all that. It becomes much easier to do that in semi-structured interviews as opposed to having that in structured interviews. There are also areas where you want to understand the numbers, and a survey would do pretty well. So once you understand those tools, then you'll be able to know what tool to effect or what tool to use for the various outputs or the outcomes that you'd want to get. So I would say that it is not cast on stone on what you'll use all of them, but you will be informed by exactly what you'd want to attain at the end of it all. It's more like doing your research when you're trying to get your research methodology. There are so many methodological frameworks, but these frameworks will be informed by what exactly you're researching on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. I would like to thank you, Alba, for the presentation. Thank you for doing a thorough job, even within the time that we're given. And also for the attendees for being attentive and present enough to also catch things that they needed clarification on. So we'll end the sessions now. I saw someone saying we'll be waiting for soft copies. Yes, of course, you'll receive the soft copies that were available to us, and we'll see you in the next session. I don't know if you have any last words, Alba, before we end.
No, I think for me it's just to thank everyone and also to encourage you that the direction or the path you're taking, it's a worthy path, and I know you can make it. In everything that we do, as much as we are getting our knowledge, we also need to have our communities in mind and find ways that we can give back to the community. So if the giving back is in form of you starting your own initiatives, your own projects, your own organizations, there is nothing fulfilling as seeing, even if it's one member of your community being transformed. And from my experience, you saw my bio data that I was a pioneer, actually establishing slum information development and resource centers. I started this at a tender age of 17 years, way back in 1992, while I was just clearing my high school. And I have never looked back, because every time I see a young man transformed, every time I see a community member transformed, and that is what gives me joy in my heart. For 20 or so years, I have been in this game, and my driving force or the passion I deduce from is seeing my community transform and change. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alba. And I forgot to mention that this is not the first time he's a presenter for WMI Academy. So he's practically become part of the community, and our values are aligned in terms of what WMI stands for, what you just spoke about, the impact of communities, and just what you do. So I would like to end the session with thanking you again for the presentation, and thanking the attendees as well. We'll see you in the next session.